Hey, thanks Vinayak for joining us today for the launch of our new ProAct version of our MXDR, the Agentic SOC. Any thoughts on how this Agentic SOC is going to play, in the market in the days to come?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be part of this, and I know agentic AI. Everybody's talking. There's a lot of discussion happening, and I'm happy to see that you are actually walking the talk of agentic AI, and happy to see the journey you are making. Right. So I know it's not easy, and to bring the entire generative AI ecosystem in a security architecture and the way you place that. To solve some of the key problems. So one key problem is definitely the speed at which you do the investigation, and second part is that the interactions that you do internally and externally, basically. So one is a burden and a people that are required to work on security solution. Other part is the speed at which it happens, and third important part is the completeness and the depth of the investigation. Basically, all of these three problems can be very well solved by the powerful wisdom that we are seeing available global level, and you are actually brought in your this one, which is certainly not only increase the depth of the solution, but also importantly, you also add a lot of value to your client in terms of the speed at which things could happen, and more importantly, the effort that will go in terms of building this to operating this basically. So I'm happy that in India somebody is already working on that part.
Fantastic. And one of the other things is you've been tracking AI for a very, very
Yeah,
long
yeah.
period of time. Where do you see the path actually going forward in the next 12 to 18 months? And especially what disruptions do you anticipate in the security operations space, which we all need to be
Yeah.
aware of?
So until now, we have been largely talking about the intelligence, global intelligence, right? So and we should have that global intelligence. But I believe the actual response and the resiliency, right? It requires a lot of thinking, because on this multidimensional nuance, multi-degree kind of thinking is required basically, right? And that's the something which thinking AI is trying to bring to the table, right? So all the reasoning it brings to the table, and they say that there's an explosion of reason, and that's the chain of thought, advanced chain of thought is trying to bring together, right? So one is solving a problem, and the problem which is global in nature, where your context matters a lot, but the issues and problem has those kind of a kind of footprint and kind of a already or possible thing in terms of globally something is available. So getting hold of that thinking and making sure you apply that for your context basically is a very important part. And the entire AI ecosystem is becoming more advanced version of the chain of thought or degree of thought basically they talk about. So getting hold of that to solve the security problem, to make sure that you don't allow that one small thing create a larger ramification basically. I believe the big game of security will be played around this.
Fantastic. And one of the key things, just on the chain of thought, we operate in the digital payment industry, the cybersecurity solution, the
Yeah.
digital payment industry. How does the context of a particular industry play in these kinds of solutions?
Yeah, so very interesting. Like, how does this work in a payment ecosystem, right? Payment is a high value, high volume and a high speed transaction, basically, right? It's like in India, if you look at the number of transactions that we process per month or per year, the kind of volume of a transaction that is increasing, and the value also got down. So on the speed at which the transactions are happening, while and we made it happen because there is a lot of interdependency we created. So there's a we say there's a unbundling of supply chain of payment industry which happened in India basically. So one is volume and speed, but other part is a lot of this heterogeneity, a lot of interdependency, a lot of this complexity that we brought to the table basically, right? So when we look at this kind of a complexity, interdependency, and entire chain of different payment paths which are created, and so many degrees of levels of the supply chain players come into picture. So solving that one problem is a complex mesh basically, right? And this mesh you have to solve that in a shortest possible time, because the good good part in the payment industry is there is always a golden hour that people talk about. Now it's not only a golden hour; it's a minutes nowadays, right?
Right,
You have
right.
to solve that in a short possible time, with this much of complexity, this much of the volume and velocity at which it's happening. So I think how do you get hold of all the intelligence, all the wisdom available globally, and make sure that you apply the context of your organization, the complexity of your organization, the heterogeneity that you bring to the table, interdependency comes together, and then you solve the problem. So it's a complex wave, and I believe that's what the uh, I think. Whereas people are talking about AI can solve a lot of problem, but I believe security can challenge all possible powerful AI which will be coming in the future.
Right, and because we operate in the digital payment industry, there's a lot of that learning and that
Yeah,
wisdom which
yeah.
can then be
Because
applied back.
you have very one is the long history of working in payment industry, long history of doing the investigation, and the long history of basically engaging at a multiple geographies as well.
Right, right.
So when I say context, right, and your context is a derivation of so many other contexts as well. So you have larger context with you basically, and this experience as well. So with this experience, with the power of a powerful AI coming into picture,
Right.
could really create a good possibility for you and for your clients.
Fantastic. And one last question, Vinayak. So, the construct of MSSP plus SIAM versus MXDR, what's your thought
I
on
mean,
this?
my basic uh, challenge and worry with SIM or MSSP, its focus is more on a how part, right? I mean, how it needs to be done. Whereas security has come down to the level, especially the discussion of resiliency that we talk about, where outcome becomes very important. So what you deliver becomes very important. So any model or any method or architecture or process or operation that you set up basically, if you start focusing on outcome it delivers basically. So I think it will bring a lot of good changes to security and security thinking basically, right? Because we know that a lot of things that are possible in security, where you can achieve a lot of these things with some regulation, some automation, some design of a better solution. But when we talk about outcome, they are thinking, you have a lot of systems thinking basically. With some expertise, with some kind of capabilities that we are just discussing about, with that you can really deliver that outcome to the whatever security plan that you have basically, right? So bringing the entire security paradigm to outcome driven should be effort and should be cause that we all should be taken on our plate.
Fantastic. Thank you. And though I said one last, but one final last question. What's your advice to Indian cybersecurity ecosystem for companies such as CISA? How should we essentially contribute in drawing this larger canvas?
Yeah, so my basic expectation and probably vision as well is like, so we have solved very complex problem, we learn very critical experiences, and now we are adding value to the global client basically. How do you consult that better? How do you accelerate our effort in a way that we platformize the capability so that not hundreds but thousands and millions of customers use it basically, and they gain, and through that process basically we also gain the learnings out of it basically, right? So platformize is better and faster is something that I expect, and once that happens, and once you play all other possible games, probably I always talk about India's cybersecurity ecosystem has come to critical mass level. What we need to do is an effort to take this to critical scale level. So this is a probably a recipe to take it to critical scale level.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vinayak, for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. Thank you.